Okay, hello everyone. Sorry about starting a couple minutes late there. Fun fact, Unity projects take quite some time to open, so that's what I was waiting on. Today what I'm going to be doing is throwing together the blockout. So to give you a point of view on what a blockout is, this is a blockout. It's a very basic version of a level. It's primarily focused on the gameplay of the level, less on the visuals, if that wasn't abundantly clear. Because what you really want to do is nail down your gameplay first. So I'll be going through making stuff. Oh, hey, Harry. I'll be going through and making stuff, building the level up, and while I go, I'll be talking a little bit about sort of for the basics of level design in Unity, which I'll openly admit I'm not the biggest expert on, but I probably have a better understanding than some people. And I'll also be talking a little bit about actual level design principles, which is something that is a lot more lost on people if Halo Forge mode, in my experience, is anything to note. You know, so it's we'll be going over some good principles and practices in terms of level design, what you want your player to be doing, and ways to approach level design so that you can ensure the best experience for your player. Because at the end of the day, that's your job. Right, an artist is a person who makes the level design look pretty. In true form, in the true definition, a level designer is focused on the experience that the player is going to have. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, I'm not going to deal too much with this level since this is level 1. So we're just going to pop over to our scenes, create scene. And this is going to be level 3, blockout. Also, if my typing looks weird, or I start sounding weird when I'm typing, it's because I have to lean over my microphone to see my keyboard. So it's a little awkward, but not too bad. Alright. So load this guy up. So the first thing that I always like to do in any given level, because you're given this nice empty slate here, right? Is to get a good perspective of your player, right? You want to make sure you know how big the player is going to be and what their range of motion is, so you have a good idea of the size. Now, this isn't as important if you have all your meshes already made and ready to go, but for us, we like to build the level first in blockout form and then mesh it up and make it look pretty, because we want to test the gameplay first. So I'm just going to create myself a cube, just a nice basic cube, stick it at the origin of the environment, right, which is 0, 0, 0. And then just make it sort of eyeball it to make it sort of a platform. We'll see how big it is once we stick the new Halen player character on it. There. So now go in here. Let's see, resources. Now, of course, this is actually something that maybe I should mention as well. As a level designer, the organization of your game project is really important. Like, arguably more important to you than anyone else, because it's your job to bring together the programming prefabs and assets that have been made by your development team and all of the meshes and textures and models from your art team, right? So you're bringing all of this stuff together. So if it's not nicely organized, it's not in where it should be, then that's just gonna be a headache and a half. So make sure it's nice and organized. I think we have a pretty decent organization, if I do say so myself, but you never know. So that's not what I want. I want characters. I believe this is the latest one. And it is. Okay, perfect. I also like this this shaded wireframe mode. That, in case you notice, like that's why she looks so black. It's because she's got all these little tessellations on her. It makes it much easier to see around the environment when you don't have any consistent lighting or anything like that. So we're looking at our character, and she's about that big. So this is sort of a good starting playground, right? To start working with the design of the level. Now I just have a few things that I have to set up here in order to make sure that that our player will actually work. because as it stands right now, if I go and play, yeah, de nada, right? So let's see. There's a couple things we have to add here. We had to add in the menu, which I think, yeah, I need to add in the is it this one? Yes, it is that one. And that should resolve some of our issues. Or not. I think it has to do with this camera here. Yeah, and you'll notice there's music in the background. That's just because I really like to listen to music while I'm working, so just got something nice and something calm. It's a 2-hour drum and bass mix, so hopefully we won't use all 2 of those hours, but you never know. These things can take a long time. Ah, there it is. So I'm gonna grab this camera, delete it because I don't need it because we have our own main camera. Gonna plunk in right there. It doesn't matter too much where it is. In our case, since it snaps to the third person, we want to sort of put it roughly where the player is. You can see down here it has a little preview of it. And in here it's gonna want to know who the player is. So we're gonna grab Halen. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I'm gonna grab Halen here and drag her in as the player. Now that should, there we go. So that's fixed some of our problems. But I'll bet you... Oh! That's been fixed. Haha! Awesome. Very cool. I'll pop out of that. Ooh, hold up a sec. Let me check my GitHub. Oh, I am here. Okay, good. Yeah. So now we sort of have our base. So I can go in here and I can go, alright. And you'll often see level designers do this, and it's rather hilarious. They'll often just run around this type of environment like this. It's just a floating block, because really what you're doing is you're kind of mentally thinking about what's going to go there, what's going to go there. You know, it's kind of like walking up to your empty house plot and going, what am I going to build? What part of the house am I going to build today? And I think my pause menu should be working, so I can get out of there now. Good, good. Yeah, there's been some improvements made on the back end by Andrew for fixing up this type of thing. Now, something that I've had a lot of issues with is the fact that the UI has to go right in the middle. And I find that incredibly irritating for working with the level, so I'm actually going to grab all of our stuff here, including this little directional light. I'm going to move it away. Oh, I did not get that. There we go. To move it away, so that whenever I'm working in the level, once I've got a lot more stuff in there, it's not going to interfere with this UI screen. And it doesn't matter where in the space your level actually is. It doesn't need to be at the center. The center is just an incredibly convenient place for snapping things. But, you know, if I grab this guy here, I can make this like a nice even, oh no, minus 300 by minus 500. Or even better. Stick it over there. That's away from there, so we can grab all of our crap that we had lying around. Which I think I got everything. Yeah, and move it over here. And we will even move this guy up to 0. Because really all these things are is it's about proportionate space, right? So you don't need things to be at 0, 0 all the time. All you need is for things to be where they're supposed to be with relation to everything else in your level. And we're good. Okay. Now, we need to get something established, since the way that the levels work in this game, right? You're in a temple, you're underground in this large cylindrical thing. So what I want to do is get some of the prefabs from the other levels in here, some of the other meshes, and use them as a base for getting the rest of this going. We'll have a level 1 here. Okay, alright. Let's start with this guy here. Drop that in and drop that in twice. It's not going to be the roof, this is going to be the floor. As you can see, it's dropped them over there, which is fair. But what we want to do is bring these guys, like we discussed. We'll move them over. Minus 500. 0. Minus 500. And you'll notice they're now conveniently here. Now we're going to have to change their Zs, but their Zs are less important. Or sorry, their Y. In Unreal, it's actually it's another way around. The Y is not the vertical direction. The Z is the vertical direction. That has to do with the way that sorry, I lost my brain there. That has to do with the way that the 3D software is interpreting the environment, interpreting axes. So it involves rotations. But in Unity, Y is our up direction. And we'll make this 500. No, not 500. That's across the map. Negative 500. There we go. And I think that puts us right on top of ourselves. Is that the case? Yes, I believe it is the case. At least it's close enough. Yeah. Close enough is a wonderful descriptor for a lot of things. That's why I envy those that work with a lot of organic level design. So they're doing a lot of outside stuff. Is that you can really get away with just like, close enough. Because you can stick like I'll stick a tree there. Oh, I'll stick a cliff over here. You know, you don't need to worry too much about where stuff is. When you're dealing with architecture, it's a lot more precise. If I'm not mistaken, these have no collision. Classic. Okay. So we'll grab this guy. Oops. And we'll need to grab the actual geometry. And add ourselves a mesh collider. Alright. This is one feature that I do prefer in Unity over Unreal, is that they have this awesome mesh collider that makes a collider that's one-to-one with your object. And it is possible in Unreal. It just takes a lot more processing power to get started that way. But what I do like about Unreal, compared to this, is that it actually just does it automatically. You don't have to add it, so there's not a chance that you can accidentally forget that you added collision to something, and now you'll see Halen is capable of running on top of this. I don't know if I mentioned it already, but we're going to be doing level 3 today. This is the last level in the game, and it takes on a bit of a different gameplay perspective. Now, since we're just doing the blockout, you're probably not going to see how you're supposed to beat the levels, so if you're concerned about spoilers, don't worry. And of course, none of like the cutscene stuff is going to be in here either, so we're focusing purely on gameplay today. And of course, if you have any questions and you're in the chat, feel free to ask me them. I'm open to questions about Unity, about level design, about the game itself. Depending on people's free time, some other people might be joining me during the stream. But yeah, I'm open to questions. So let's say level 3 probably want to be about that big, roughly. So we need to consider here what our main architecture of our level is going to look like. Now I have some doodles here beside me that are going to help me figure out what this level is going to look like. But for the most part, I pretty much build levels in a very unorganized fashion compared to the way most people probably would. I prefer to build as I decide gameplay decisions as I build, you know, as opposed to like writing down a paper design and that's it. That's the way it will be, you know. So some would call that unorganized and insane. Others would call it a Others would call it interesting, and innovative, very modern age level design concept. Well, colloquially, I don't know if that's the right word for that, but we'll call it organic level design. Because you're building as you go. Okay, so let's see here. So the main things we need in this level, right? Because it's important to establish what you need first. We need the player to enter from the bottom, right? So we need to have a location for them to enter from. And this has to be a location that makes sense that it would be blocked off after. We don't want the player going back there, right? We also have to have somewhere closer to the middle here. Pardon me. Some sort of section that's going to have some cutscene stuff take place on it. So we need to have a little bit of combat for the player to get up there. Ooh, my phone's going off frequently. And the player will need to go there to do some cutscene stuff, which will be followed by a separate gameplay sequence. So let's see. This area is a lot more open. It has actual sunlight in it, which is a nice change for the environment, which up till this point has had a lot of artificial lighting. So I get to use some beautiful orange colors once I get around to that. We won't be seeing that much today because it's just a blockout, but it will be important at this point. And if you're wondering why I'm sitting here just sort of floating around the level, it's because of that thing I mentioned earlier. I'm sitting here visualizing where geometry is going to go and how I'm going to get the player to go up or down a certain area. And at some point today, we're also going to be hopping out of Unity and going into Maya to do some modeling too, because the blockout system in Maya is not good. Or in Unity is not good. So let's see. We need to establish some structural stuff. So my favorite thing to use in this case is the ever-present cube. The cube is fantastic. Anyone that tells you that a cube is not fantastic is spewing hooey, because you can make almost any required prefab out of cubes. And in my case, luckily, what I'm working with here, what I'm trying to make, are fairly rectangular structures. So I'm going to be able to get away with quite a bit. Oh, you know what I should add here as well? I should tweak the lighting a little bit so I can give myself some ambient light. Build the lighting there. Oh, alright, there we go. There we go, that's so much easier to see. Okay. And you see why I would want this wireframe, because you see when I take it off, kind of hard to see what's going on. Whereas here I get a very firm understanding of the way the geometry is working with the rest of the environment. So let's see here. This bad boy. Oh, that didn't work. Sorry, I'm coming off of another piece of software I've been using, so I might have might make a few flubs here and there. Oh, and before we do this, there's a few things we need to set here. We need to set this as terrain and wall. I mean, this is something associated with our project, so this wouldn't necessarily help you with yours. But it's what allows our character, oh, I'm a Yanni McYonnerton, to do some running and run up walls and stuff like that. So this way, as we see, I load in as Halen. If I run over here, I will be able to run up this wall. And as you can see, even in gameplay mode here, it's kind of hard to see what's going on, despite the fact that we have that shader on in the engine. It doesn't carry over to the game. So what I like to do is just grab the main camera and turn on the crease shading and edge detection, right? Which is kind of like that cartoony look. So you'll notice how you see there's this kind of black outline around stuff. It just helps differentiate things when there's a lot of detail, you know, and it shades in the creases there a little bit better. And of course, I believe we already have screen space ambient occlusion on, so that's also going to help too. Alright, so let's get building. So I want to have 2 paths for the player in this particular instance. And I want them to have less of a focus on rings, which in the rest of the environment, there's a lot of these sort of large ring-like platforms. I want to have less of an emphasis on that and more of an emphasis on actual buildings, right, with this kind of ornate architecture, because at this point in the game, the players had a few things revealed to them about the people who built this temple, and a few things revealed about its purpose. So we're allowed to have some more interesting architecture around here at the end, as opposed to toward the beginning. And perhaps a little perspective in this would be good too. So I'm going to find this here, main wall. I'm going to add that as well. I'm going to bring it over to our position. And I believe it's already... Oh, it's not quite sized just right. We could make this a little taller so that it fits. Alright, so this is just sort of going to give us a point of view on this, so we can add a component to it as well. We need to add those physics. Mesh glider. And as well make it terrain and wall. Yes, change children. All that means, by the way, if you ever get that when you're doing this type of thing, is it's talking about the fact that this is a group. So it wants to know if you want to add that to everything that's underneath it, which you probably do. Alright, so obviously this causes some problems because, well, it's dark. So what we're just going to go in here and do is select the wall, and we're going to turn off receiving shadows. No, we're going to turn on receiving shadows. We're going to turn off casting shadows. Right, and this is going to give us this sort of effect, which will be useful for us. How big is this? 70? And 70. Okay, interesting. Oh well, that's not super relevant. Greg, what was it doing? Oh yeah. So we want to actually scale this guy in a bit, so that it doesn't have that edge missing there around the outside. So let's go see, did we solve a problem? Yeah, look at that. Nice and close to the edge. And of course, you can always have stuff intersecting like this in almost any game engine I've ever seen, so don't worry too much about that. You know, things don't need to line up perfectly. In fact, I'd recommend against it, because often when they line up perfectly like that, you get weird lighting glitches, which are obviously not good. Alright. You, sir, as well. Actually, what I need is to actually duplicate this guy. And rotate him around. Where the heck did he go? That's what I want. That's what I want. And stick it on top, because we're actually gonna need some more advanced lighting here. Yeah, it's gonna be nice once it's, you know, on its way to being done. So we're going to be trying to build this sort of advanced clumpy building sort of shape here. But of course we're going to want to keep it within the confines of the mechanics of the game, so we always need to constantly be testing. If you ever, if you're a programmer or you ever deal with programmers, you'll know that it's you change one thing, you test it. You change a thing, you test it. You change a thing, you test it. So you always need to make sure that in a game specifically, when you're doing this type of thing as a level designer, you need to test, play test over and over and over again. Not only are you going to find bugs and glitches long before you need to get it play tested by other people, but you'll also have a better understanding of what the scale you're working with is while you're working on it. And when you catch that stuff sooner rather than later, it's a lot easier to fix. So I'm going to do something here because I want the player to have to do a little bit of aerial navigation here going up this side. Because I'm kind of going to do like a thing where the player goes up one side like this and goes up the other side like this. You can see my mouse, eh? Okay, good. I was going to say, because I'm pointing at a lot of things, and if you can't see the mouse, that's going to be problematic. Oh, the stream seems to be doing something weird right now. So by adding this sort of vertical, or this edge here, what I'm doing is I'm working around a mechanic that we have that allows the player to run up walls, right? And I don't want them to be able to just run up that wall. So no matter how hard they try, they're just going to bonk into a ceiling. Right? But if you have enough adept skill, you can figure out how to get above it. And that's something that I want to have a lot of... Ooh. Hollow collision. Where were you just now? That's something that I want to actually have a lot of. Nah, see? I didn't add the mesh collider to the right thing. Yeah, you want to have a way that makes skilled players capable of, getting around obstacles in a quicker fashion. It's something I've always appreciated in level design in other single-player games, where if you know that the thing is here, you can go get it. One of my favorites was the game Unreal. There was always a secret weapon. The weapon you'd get in the next level, you could get in the level before it if you knew where it was. And it would often make your way getting through that level easier and more interesting. So that's something that I've always liked, is the ability to have multiple ways of playing through a level depending on the skill you have prior. So that's something that I tried to work into this game as often as possible. Just making some of those floating platforms. And the other thing that I have to do here too is try to make it clear to our modeler what exactly he's looking at when he gets this level later. Because if it's not clear to him, we're in trouble, because he's not going to know what he's supposed to make. Because all of these blocks eventually at some point will turn into, meshes and stuff like that. It's a bit thicker. And I'm going to want to bring this guy out and turn it into something that's going to prevent the player from just going from here to here, right? Because I'm trying to force them to go around it unless you know that little trick that I just showed you. So congratulations, you just get the inside scoop. So I'm going to do some, this is going to be some kind of robot thing. And we can very easily use it here. And we'll deal with what happens up there later. Like I said, that's my kind of just like, I'll deal with it later type of situation where it's like, we'll fly by the seat of our pants. Grab a drink of water. And of course, we don't want this to be runnable, right? Otherwise, it negates its purpose. But we need to distinguish it so that while I'm playing, I know what I'm doing. So let's go in here. We'll change its element. Bring this over here so we can see what I'm doing. To, I like sharp base color, because it's this ominous red, right? Which, of course, is the shader used for sharp. But this way I'll know when I come here and I run up, there we go. That's a super jump. It's a feature, not a bug. So we'll know when we come here and we're doing testing to make sure that we've covered all of our bases, that we know that the player can't actually run up that particular surface. And of course, they'll know in game by looking at it what they can run up and what they cannot run up. We're going to try to make that incredibly clear, such as making it look uneven, hard to run up, and of course after the first level they'll establish what they can and cannot run up, because they're probably going to try to run up wires, and of course won't be able to. So now that we've tested that, it's back to it. Now we can continue to tweak things here. So I kind of want to force the player to use a long dash here. So what I'm going to do is use a classic trick that I like to call ramping, which is basically whenever you want the player, want to convince the player that they're capable of making a jump you need them to do, you show them where to go, you know? It's like having a glowing ladder, or an object that has a certain light on it present in an environment, so that they know that, oh, this means this. It's like a good one is Borderlands. Any of the crates in Borderlands that have the green light on them, you know that you can break that sucker open and get some loot. If it doesn't have a green light, it's just a prop. If it does have a green light, well, you can bust it open and use it. So what I'm trying to do here is create some sort of situation where the player is capable of understanding, oh, look, they have this here, this means it's possible to make this jump. You know, so that they don't try to, first off, they're not like a deer in headlights faced with so many options because they think they can jump everywhere, but they do know exactly where that they can jump. And there are places where we don't tell them that they can do it, and those are typically secrets. And of course I won't be adding the secrets in this this blockout video here. See, if I can make it, in fact I can make that even farther, and this is the third level, so they should be pretty good at this by now. Yeah, I won't be showing any secrets in this particular video because I'm trying to try not to spoil the surprise for when this thing goes out there for other people to play. Ooh, I like that. That's a good amount of it's a good little space here. Okay. So now we're here. We've just asked the player to do something rather daring, so what are we going to do now? Well, we should probably have some sort of reward for that. So I think at this point it would be good to have a checkpoint. Particularly because it will help them avoid the irritation of falling back down. Pardon me. I have a larger platform here. And maybe some sort of thing sticking out of the wall. Like so. That is avoiding them being able to run up it, but it also should be big enough to accommodate a checkpoint. In fact, we could probably move this guy. Oh, that's the wrong grab. Move this guy right here. Another example of the thing I was talking about with the Borderlands thing would be the dark and light walls in Portal games. They let you know exactly where you can and cannot put something so you don't find yourself shooting a portal at every possible corner. Now, the bad side of that particular system, you can tell with the level design in Portal 2, while fantastic, and Portal 2 being one of my favorite games, is that the user tested that thing to the grave. You know, like they made it so that pretty much the only places that were white were places that you're going to want to have portals. You know, as opposed to the previous game, which did have that system, but it helped avoid it, in a manner of speaking. By giving you sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Giving you, whatever, false positives, basically, where they're kind of like, oh, you could do this, or... you could do this, you know, and then you're like, oh, maybe I'll do that, and then you do it, and it goes, nope, that doesn't work. Ha! You know, and they get you with it. I'm gonna add this little lip here so that the player can't. Ooh, I didn't notice that. What are you from? Get out of there. No, I'll have some sort of. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Some sort of chubby little robot machine down here. Because, of course, they're using the temple as a power source. So they'd have all kinds of machinery all over the place. And to prevent the player from running up this corner, we'll have a thing there too. Now, that might have actually not been worth doing anything over because you can just dash up there. But it does force you to use that dash. Arrive over here. And I want to get the player up there, right? Because we'll show them that as an objective. And you know what? I think I'll put the checkpoint up there actually instead of here. Yeah, I think that's a better system. So now I'm just gonna take this guy. Ooh, that's not what I wanted. Actually, that is what I wanted. I do want to do that. Heh, that's an idea. And that's the beauty of that mental approach I mentioned earlier about sort of designing the level as you go, as you begin to see where the experiences will begin to take place instead of planning prior, is you come up with some interesting ideas. We have a lot of rubble in this area, so we can actually get away with doing something sort of like this to give the player some perspective on the destruction. And we can take something a little more shaped like that. There would be something that's in between here. Give them a bit of challenge. And we can make it flatter, more platform-like. Yeah, there. Because later in this level, of course, we're going to have the player running across falling platforms that are all warbly and lopsided. So this is a good precursor to that, is realizing that just because it's not flat doesn't mean you can't run on it. We have that in level 2, but we can't guarantee in level 2 that the player's ever actually going to see that particular, you know, platform. So this one we can. It's a much more linear experience in level 3. There we go. Oh, did I make it? I made it. Recovery. And we're here. I'd say that earned a checkpoint. So we'll stick one here. Easy to do. Resources, prefabs, other, nope. Objects, checkpoint. Drop a checkpoint here for the player to use to avoid doing that again if they don't want to. And we'll of course need a checkpoint down here that the player will start with. Now we do need to have a little bit of combat in this area. So I think, considering that this is one of our paths, we're going to want to have another path on this side. So we do have some room here to work with secrets in combat. I think that is exactly what we'll go ahead and do. Now, I may actually be able to get away with using a mesh here that I have lying around. That's the nice thing about sort of, you know, we're on level 3. I made level 2 first, then I made level 1. Now I'm making level 3. Is you have a lot of stuff sort of just lying around. What is this? Oh, that could be useful. What is its scale factor? Good lord. ADC, we don't want that. Of course, we're gonna want as well. So, come on, work with me here. So I gotta zoom in and go on this again. Ah, great! It's already got a mesh collider on it. Why? Oh. Oh well. So we can make use of this mesh, actually. Particularly over here, where we're sort of short on things right now. This is kind of getting reminiscent of our first demo level that we made as a proof of concept. It's given me the good old nostalgias. Let's see, move this over here too. Actually, you know what? I want to make this a robot part because I want to sort of force the player through that center or around the other side of it. And you will find, especially when you're working on a whole game, you know, with your own choice making a lot of difference in what actually happens here, is that you'll find scapegoats. And that's fine. That's totally acceptable. My scapegoat is usually, robot stuff, player can't climb it. And I leave it up to Matt to figure out what that robot stuff is, but at the end of the day, as long as it proves fun, you've done your job. So let's just see, does this thing have collision on it? Or was I lied to? It has collision, but it is not climbable, and that is because it is not terrain and wall. Cool. Oh my god, it's been 47 minutes already. I think we'll go for maybe like an hour 15 or so. I'll get to the point where I have this side and this side blocked out, and where we're gonna do the converging in the middle, because I don't want to make this video too long. I just want to make it long enough that it's insightful. Michael's previous Devcast on music was a bit shorter, but it was shorter because of consequence, I think, because of the time it takes to do that. Not that it's not hard, it's just it's a lot less tedium. Level design has a lot of tedium to it, but if you enjoy that tedium, then it's incredibly rewarding, and I myself personally enjoy that tedium. Some nice little flourishes here, a little bit of cover too. So as you can see, I've sort of started to build the framework for this level, and you can kind of see it here. Player goes up this way, comes around, up like this, you know, up onto this platform, and then up above they swirl around into the central area. Or they go this way and it moves them down this way where they reach a thing, which they could also reach by going up here, which comes up like this and then crosses around and swirls around into the center. So either way you're doing a path that gets you to that middle, but it's a matter of what you'd like to do in the meantime. This is a lot more of that sort of complex puzzly look to it, while this has a lot more of a combat oriented side. Giving the player options, of course. Always a good choice. If you're ever faced with the option of, oh, do we let the player do this or this or this, or do we force them to do this in this one specific singular thing, you almost in every case want to suggest that the player can do whatever they like, given the mechanics at hand. When I say that, I don't mean like, oh, this is a shooter game and here we want to give them the option for diplomacy. You know, I really don't think that that's what they were thinking. But it's more like, do you want to give them the option to use a rocket launcher or a sniper rifle? Well, maybe both. Rocket launcher requires that you're down there and you're in the midst of it. Sniper means you need to find a cover, a little perch, and some cover. So it's important to make sure that you give options to your player. For us, our options are platforming, combat, and exploration, right? So the tunnels and stuff too. So we're gonna have a little bit of combat here. Let's just have a look, see how big are these platforms. And of course, at some point, you become very, very good at the mechanics of the game, allowing you to do things like that. Now, just the angle to hit walls in order to get super jumps off of them. And these are areas that are decent fighting size for a small gaggle. To play a little place to jump up here, do a little more fighting. We'll do some platforming between these two so that they still have some platforming to do no matter which side they go on. And of course, they can't really ignore the combat too much. They could run away from it though, and that's totally acceptable. Let's take our platforms. So I want to give both sides sort of the opportunity to make use of these. Oh, why is that tilted sideways? No, that's... I'm looking at you. Yeah. Nope. It's just this one here. There we go. Make these a little bit bigger. Yeah. In fact, this one I'll even just connect like this. Oh, wrong way. Because I want the I want to reduce that frustration factor on the player. You always want to reduce your player frustration. If they're frustrated playing your game, you've failed miserably. So, watch out for that. Bring this down, we'll make this a little more of a vertical jump. There we go. I think I'll move this guy. In fact, you know what? We'll just chalk this sucker up like this. Do that kind of thing. We always want to have this sort of circling factor that the player has to use to go from one side to the other. Perfect. Do a little jump up here. So it's very easy to go down, and going up is the hard part. And the other thing too that you have to do when you're testing your levels like this is you have to sort of put yourself in the shoes of the player that you're working with. You know, because for example, there's always this running joke of double jumps where if you can hear my keyboard, right? There's people who jump like this, you know, and then they do their action. And then of course there is people who do this, you know, and of course those people, based on that jump, they won't be able to make it. So you need to somewhere in between here balance the play you want to have accessible for everyone or for different types of players versus accessible for only a select few. You know, one of the major issues a lot of people took with the initial level design of level 2 in this game when we were doing testing was that you pretty much had to use the double jump dash method to get pretty much anywhere. So what we did was we modified that level and stubbed it down a little bit, reduced the overall size, and made a lot more accessible paths via simply jumping or perhaps just a dash. And we also implemented a system that made it a lot more clear where we're expecting the player to use that ability, which of course would be these little ramping things. Now let's see here. We're going to have some combat here, so we're going to want something. We have these awesome battery pack meshes that Mathieu made. So we're going to make use of those here too. It'll be a good place to put sniper enemies as well, if we do that. Don't worry about this whole lighting thing. This is something that's fixed once I go over that. Which, you know what? Maybe later this week, I'll when I finish off this blockout, I'll go over some lighting tips in Unity, because especially for my fellow Unreal Engine developers, if you're watching this, I can understand your frustration with some of Unity's systems and limitations, and I've found peace with them, and I know some ways around them. So I could probably offer some advice in that regard. All right. Come on and bring this up. As you can see, I'm literally just using cubes. Like I'm not using crazy prefabs or anything. These are just cubes, and you can already start getting a sense of the architecture of this place, right? Especially if you use just some basic colors like that. And I'm gonna want to actually take this big ass platform, reduce it down a bit, and start making use of it here. I don't want to do something like this. Now, if we were doing a traditional sort of puzzle game, there would be a lot more thought going into where these things are placed. But it's a platformer, which is a little different than a puzzle game, right? In fact, it's incredibly different than a puzzle game. But some of the same mechanics apply. You know, you need to make sure that there's enough challenge for your player in maneuvering, which is typically not what you would have the challenge be in. Challenge tends to be in some form of combat or otherwise. I'm just adding this one in here underneath, not because it's supposed to be jammed in there. It's just so that that collision is consistent, right? And that won't be there when Matt goes in to do anything with it. And the reason he'll know that is because I can just apply a favorite material to it, so that he knows that this is something that's entirely different. We'll go like this. Actually, you know what? We're gonna curve that sucker in. Now, how are we going to get the player up here? Oh, where's my mouse? Up here. Well, they can do the wall run up there, but we can't guarantee that any given player will know that mechanic. So what we need to do is offer something else. So, off the top of my head, a good thing to offer would be some way to use that dashing ability. That we can guarantee that they know how to use because we told them to use it. On several occasions, actually. So if I go like this and offer them up this broken bridge that intersects over here. I think that should be good. And we've also had several instances in the game prior where there have been broken bridges that the player can jump across. So while it might cross some people's minds that it wouldn't be their first instinct to jump across a broken bridge, we've sort of established that earlier in the game. But even if not, that's the point. There's an entire other route. Or you could run up the wall here. You know, like I said, these are these options in this toolkit that we're providing the player using our mechanics. And get up here. They can narrowly make this one. So maybe I'll want to change that a bit. So I think that's what I'll do. I'm going to grab these guys, which are sort of being problematic for me right now. Move them down a bit so that the player doesn't need to use a dash to get up there. And then perhaps do a little thing like this to help sort of entice the player's movement in this direction. So they'll have a better understanding of where they're supposed to go. And light, of course, plays a huge role in a player's ability to navigate. Like, it can't be understated how important, or can't be overstated how important lighting is to directing your player. If you ever wonder why you're heading in the direction you're heading without really knowing that that's the direction you're supposed to go, it's probably because there's a light there. An exceptional use of that I've seen recently was watching through somebody play through the latest Resident Evil game. They've used lighting there to direct the player in an absolutely exceptional manner. And I applaud them heavily on their level design in that game. So it's important to remember lighting is part of your level design toolkit. It's not just the thing that artists use to make your world look pretty. It's something you can very functionally use to get players to move in the directions you want them to move in. So let's see here. Did we fix our little problem? We'll run over here and find out. Oops. So now just a double jump will get you from here to here, which I think is a nice touch, and you'll need that dash to go the extra mile. And then this is going to lead us into our central area, where we'll be meeting with the other side here. There's my phone. So let's have a look here. So now that we've sort of established the way that we want this particular path to go here, you can sort of see how it flows. We want to figure out how we're going to get the player to go here. And actually, I just got a brilliant idea that might help some people sort of visualize what's going on in my head. Is if I take this guy, right? So I'll just do this. Red pen, yeah. So we start the player here, right? And what we're doing is we're having them either go up this way, around, across, up like this, around this thing, you know, to here. Or from here, they can branch off and go to here. They could also take this, go across this bridge, coming around like this, and then up like that, and then from here the route would join like this and move up. And then from here we're going to bring them into an area that's up above this bottom area. So you see, or you know, you could go from here and run up like this, or you could take this path here, like when you get up to this point, and then continue going down and across like this. So we're giving the player a whole bunch of options, and we need to figure out how we're going to get them to merge there in the middle. So I think we're going to need to employ the use of a previously used mesh. Let's see here. Where is it? I think this is it. Yeah, that's it. Okay. I'm going to want to attach a mesh collider to that. And of course, as always, oh, okay, so we're actually going to have to delete that and bring it in here so that it's centered at 0, 0 already. And then when we want to center it in here, we can just do it with our numbers. All right. It's a very valuable tool, is your actual transforms here. Some of the worst level design I've ever seen was done just by slapping things together violently. Having that specific orientation really does make a world of difference. So let's see here. We'll have this thing approximately like so. Oh yes, and we do need to add our thing back to it, as we just deleted it. Physics mesh collider. Let's just go ahead and see where we're at with it. Oh, get up there. There we go. And we're here. So we reached this middle platform. The question is, do we want to have the player have to go here and do another one of those double jumps? And as for this side, let's have a look here and see what can we do here that would be interesting to get the player to move from one side to the other. Well, a tool we haven't been using too much that we have in terms of not a gimmick, but a in terms of like a mechanic. It's not really a mechanic as much as it's like we've established prior that certain things work certain ways. Is we have these beams, right, that the robots have wires and stuff running through. It's sort of like a channel. I think that using that here would be valuable. Not to mention, add a little bit of visual diversity to the level's architecture. That's a little bit too long. There we go. Well, that's not long enough. Oh well, good enough. So now, from here, we'll have some sort of indirect platforming thing that they can use to get from here up to here. Or we'll have other things where this beam going across will have them be able to run up and jump onto it. The question is, how do we want the player to do that? Oh, me back. Let's see. Let's see now. Well, we do want to be having more platforms with buildings on them. That's something we've been sort of lacking. That's supposed to be a major staple in this level. So what I'm going to do is do something sort of like this. That will have various buildings on it, and one of those buildings will be here. It will be obstructing this particular end. So, by doing this, what we've done is we've created an area that the player will recognize that they could go up to run around, or were they feeling daring, they could also simply jump onto the railing themselves, the railing, the something a little different than that, not railing. But yes, so in this particular case, from where we're at, when the player comes up here, and they're met with this particular area, which I will use my super ninja Halen skills because I'm the fucking game maker, to come here, snag my checkpoint. So they could go this way, accessible via double jump, which is a nice touch for more accessibility. And then they could come here and go, oh, I see. And then they jump here, and then it's just a simple dash up, and they're up here. Or the player could do, well, that, but backwards. If they had good control over the character and a good understanding of the mechanics, then they could get there even faster. I think that's going to wrap up what we're going to do today. I just want to show you sort of the blockout, how I theorize level design. You can see we've gotten quite a lot of progress done here. This is the first half of this level. The second half will have a few other gimmicks and touches to it, but those are things that I don't know if I'm allowed to share with you guys. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed this sort of little look into level design, into building things with Unity, into the concept of blocking out your levels. And I hope if you've left, this with any understanding of what we do when we build levels as level designers is I hope if you've learned anything, it's that you've learned that blocking out is so important. Never just jump in and make a pretty level. That's called an environment piece, and it's just a non-functioning game level that looks really pretty. I think that it's really important to establish your gameplay long in advance of your art assets for that particular level. That being said, art informs level design, right? These little floating platforms here, the reason that they're like this is because I know that that fits with our art style. But our art style and having each one of these assets and individually building the pretty environment is not something you should do immediately. You should always block out. So, hope that was sort of an interesting look into this. I think I'll do another one that focuses a little more on lighting with a little more technical understanding of how to make things look certain ways and manipulate the lights and manipulate fog and not ray tracing, what's it called? Global illumination, so GI, and getting a nice look for your level. So thank you guys for watching. Thanks to those who are watching this live stream, and thank you for watching those who will be watching this later on YouTube, and hope you have a fantastic day.